Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching second part of What If Naruto Became the Supreme Being. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Demiurge had just come back to the tomb of Nazarick with his new friend and saw that Lord Ainz was no longer there. That is, he was probably in Kumo and waiting for the right time to make their country an ally. He was excited to see this happen. In the other lands, they had no trouble taking them over, but since the people here had chakra, he thought this would be a bigger challenge overall. Sad to say, it won't work since they are immune to most jutsu and only the strongest can do something that might hurt them. When he looked at Fu, he realized he might be rushing things a bit, since she and some of the other beast containers could make things hard for the Pleiadians in battle, but they wouldn't make things hard for the Guardians. His powers could cancel out theirs, and he knew that most of the Guardians on their own wouldn't be able to beat Albedo in a straight-up fight. But he turned to Fu and said, "The strength of the tomb is for another time. It looks like the master is still out and won't be back for a few days. Please get to know the tomb. I'll have CZ show you around and let the others know you're here." Fu smiled brightly at the silent maid and nodded her head. "That's cool, but won't you also show me around?" He shook his head and smiled. "No, unfortunately I have some other business to deal with at this time and need to gather information. Please remember that you are being watched and to not aggravate the warriors in the tomb. Other than that, if you meet some of the other workers they will show you how to care for the tomb as a whole clear." She bowed her head. Hey, she was arrogant and had her own swagger when it came to fighting, but she was not stupid to think she was unbeatable. More in the sense that she knew she would die if she fought this man, who had killed the shinobi and the maid. Even more so because Chome is telling her that he is stronger than even the Biju and that if someone is controlling and ordering him, it is someone to be afraid of.
She agreed with this evaluation and said she would try playing ball.
Demiurge watched as the girl and CZ left, and then he used his ring of Ainz gown to teleport to the lower levels of the tomb. When he went into the caves, he saw a huge creature that looked like a slug. It was white with blue spots and had 6 tails behind it. This was the 6 tails, which could make and use bubbles and were thought to be the best poison users in their family. Ainz was able to get the man away from his tail animal and set it free in the cave. When asked why he didn't do it for Shukaku, he said that the Tanuki was too far gone to be saved and that it was better to make a new one in the form of Gaara, who he knew would use his powers more wisely. Demiurge asked the tailed beast, "Is it Saiken?" "Yes, demon. What can I do for you?" Saiken turned to Demiurge and asked. Demiurge said, "I'm just checking in to make sure everything is the way you want it." Demiurge nodded as Saiken said, "Yes, I love how quiet the caverns are and how this place seems to go on forever. I'd love to live down here forever and never have to worry about the real world again." Demiurge said, "That's interesting, but I wanted to ask you a question about the tailed beast in general. Lord Ainz asked me to do this, and I'm happy to get the information from you." Saiken nodded. Demiurge looked at the tail beast, and Saiken asked, "Well, what's your question?" He put his hand to his chin and asked, "The tailed beast, where do you go when your host dies?" "The Netherworld is a place between this realm, hell, and heaven. We are not allowed to leave the Netherworld and go to the other realms unless we are reborn in the human world so that we can be used as a weapon again." He let out some of his aura, which made the cavern move a little, but Demiurge stayed still. Demiurge thought it was interesting and asked, "Is it possible that the Kyuubi is there?" "Unfortunately, I think so, but I think there are problems with his return. From what I could see of the Netherworld, he has half of his power, making him not as strong as he used to be. At the same time, he is trapped there in this world with no way out. So while most of the time we are reborn, he is not allowed to pass back into the land of the living," Saiken said as Demiurge nodded. Demiurge said, "I see. Without a way to bring him back to full power, he can't come back to this world, right?" "Yes. It's sad, because he was father's favorite child and the one who watched over us as we grew up. Worst of all is that jerk Hamura and his cursed line," Saiken said as Demiurge raised an eyebrow. He asked, "Who?" "I'm sorry. I forgot that not everyone knows how the world got so full of chakra," Saiken said, but Demiurge ignored him. Demiurge said, "That's fine, but could you tell me more about this man and why you cursed him?" Saiken nodded. "Of course, in the beginning, there was a woman named Kagaya Otsutsuki who was known for her great strength. Even back then, she was thought to be a goddess given human form and with power that made her stronger than anyone else around her while she was living under the great tree. During her time, she was attacked by many invaders who killed one of her closest friends, forcing her to make a deal with the tree in exchange for its power and to lock up those who. Demiurge said, "Yes, Lord Ainz told me that Madara used the Kyuubi to attack the hidden leaf before, and that the darkness that came from him was greater than any human in history." The tailed beast just shook its head. "That is where you were wrong. Madara was not as evil as people made him out to be." "Did he kill people in the clan wars?" "Yes." "Did Hagoromo's oldest son Indra become a douche?" "Yes." "But Madara was one of the few good Uchiha because he had the power of the Mangekyou Sharingan. It was his dream to unite the world in peace, and so he and Hashirama were friends because they had the same goal and dream." Demiurge was interested. "Corrupted a whole clan? How is that even possible?" "It seems like those in power have changed history to make their worst enemies look worse, but in reality, they were the ones who went against the status quo. I know it's hard to believe, but he managed to plant the idea that the Uchiha were better than everyone else and that their clan should be at the top, unchallenged by anyone else. Unfortunately for him, his end came soon after when he was hurt and his brother was losing his eyesight. Madara took his brother's eyes to fix his own and swore that he was no longer part of his family." Demiurge asked again, "History is fascinating. What happened to Madara and Izuna? Why is Konoha the way it is now?" "Madara moved to the land of Uzu and married an Uzumaki woman. They had a child and soon grandchildren after that. When he died of old age, he had his body and eyes sealed in Uzu to keep them safe. You might be able to find it since you are sitting on the city as we speak. The children had a child named Kushina, who gave birth to Naruto." Demiurge was shocked to find out that his lord and master was a Madara Uchiha. This meant that the power of the Uchiha clan ran through his veins when he was alive. He might be able to take Madara's body and use the eyes as well. But his eyes were already stronger than Madara's, so there was no reason to take them. If he ever brought the dead back to life, though, he might want them. "What about Konoha?" The slug sighed. He knew that this history was all mixed up, but it was better to tell it now than keep it hidden. They didn't tell anyone, even though all the tailed beasts knew the truth, because they knew no one would believe them. That goes back to when the second Hokage chose Hiruzen to be the third Hokage. From what I heard, a man named Danzo was slowly corrupting the country and turning them from a peaceful nation into a nation filled with arrogance and a desire to be the strongest by killing and enslaving everyone else. Unfortunately, he knew this wouldn't work if he did it on his own, so he took talented shinobi and made them into his. Demiurge said, "How sad. The man who gave birth to our lord is a very good person." "Yes, but unfortunately it was because of Himura's clan, the Hyuga. They are part of the corruption because they want power and want to show how much better they are," Saiken said at the end. Demiurge nodded his head and said, "Well, thank you for the information, but I have to go." He left the slug to continue exploring the tunnels and went to the throne room, where he saw Albedo going through some paperwork and sighing at a picture of their lord in his human form. He groaned. He wasn't going to like getting in the way of her moment. Kumo. Zeshi was with Ainz as they walked through the village. When they got to the village, they saw that things were bad. People were either looking at each other and waiting for something to happen, or they were staring at the posters on the walls that showed the former Raikage, B, and Yugito and said that a reward was being offered for their capture. Ainz sighed. People in the village looked at him because he was an outsider and his friend, but they looked at her like she was sweets. Ainz was ready for anything, but he knew that making a scene would help no one. Ainz found the former Raikage's chakra after wandering around the village, but before they could reach him, 3 Jonin appeared in front of them and laughed. "You know, new guy, there is a toll in this village. You have to pay to stay here every day. But I'm sure your friend over there could pay off both of your debts if she comes with us," the Jonin said, leering at Zeshi, which made her frown. "You don't deserve to touch me, weakling, let alone be in my master's presence. Leave before I turn you into a smudge on the ground." This made the Jonin angry, and one of them came up to them with a kunai. "Know your place, bitch. If we tell you to take a beating, you better be ready for it, got it?" Ainz frowned but didn't do anything because Zeshi could easily handle these fools. In this world, she was like a Biju, so killing her would be too much for him. Fools. Without warning, she swung her scythe around and made a full 360-degree turn before going back to where she was. In a matter of seconds, the men blew up into a pile of blood, leaving nothing in their place. Ainz groaned. He muttered, "What a bother," as he shook his head. "Yes, Ainz-sama, they don't deserve to look at your beauty or see you, let alone me. After all, she said, turning to him with a blush on her face and her eyes widening, I'm yours alone, and you're the only one who can do bad things to me. Naruto started to sweat when he heard those words. Right, let's keep going. The resistance should be close by. Out of the shadows, Naruto saw a girl with golden eyes and dark skin smiling at them. You're right, buddy, he said. She looked down and saw a scythe at her neck. He is not your friend. Do you get it? Zeshi yelled at Karui, who was sweating like crazy. Sure thing, please put that away. I'm not your enemy right now. Zeshi gave the scared teen a small glare before putting away her weapon. Okay, if you want to meet Lord A, just follow me, Ainz said to the girl with dark skin. Zeshi kept her ki at a minimum because she didn't want this hussy to steal her lord while she was standing next to her. Even though she isn't as pretty as some of the other women in the tomb, she was sure that her status was high enough that he liked her more than the maids. Ainz asked Karui, who was grinning, why are you taking us to your leader? Let's just say that anyone who kills those jerks who bother people on the order of the current rakeage is fine with me. I don't care about jerks like them, and you killing them got you a meeting with Lord A, she said with a cocky air. Interesting, he said as she frowned, what are your plans to take back the village? At this point, we don't have a plan. We could kill the rakeage and the traitors who worked with him, but the lightning Dayamo would just come down harder on us and put one of his men in his place, Karui said with a serious face. I see. Naruto, Zeshi, and Karui finally found a hidden entrance behind a stand. They went underground and ran into a group of people who were either just hanging out or training. Most of them were wearing village headbands that had been crossed out to show that they no longer thought of themselves as part of Kumo but were still loyal to A. When people talked about the man, he was sitting at a round table with his hair in a mess. He was wearing green trousers and golden armbands. Next to him was a man who was dressed in white, wore sunglasses, and had at least 8 swords on him. At the same time, he has what Naruto thinks are sandal boots on his feet and a white headband. He also has a bull and an octopus on his shoulder, if Naruto's kanji is correct. A teen with braided long blonde hair and prayer beads in her hand was to the left of A. Next to her was a teen with bobbed blonde hair, big breasts, and a well-developed womanly body. Lord A, I brought some help, the teen told him. A looked at the teen and his younger friend and could feel their power. They were strong, stronger than anyone else he had ever felt, and his senses told him they were even stronger than he thought. In this case, it means he had no idea how strong they really were. From what he saw, he knew the girl was weaker than the guy, but both of them were strong in their own ways. Nice to meet you, these are my friends. B, my brother and the keeper of the 8 tails, Yugito, the keeper of the 2 tails, Samui, and Darui, A said as Ainz looked over the group next to A. Naruto's sweat dropped when he saw a smack B on the head for what he had done. Yugito said to the other container, who was making her mad, sorry about him, nice to meet you. Samui said, nice to meet you, as Zeshi glared at her and Yugito. Darui said, hey, and Naruto nodded. Ainz pointed to his partner Zeshi and said, I'm Ainz, and this is my partner Zeshi. Don't be fooled by her size. She's strong on her own. Zeshi blushed at both the compliment and being called his partner. Yugito laughed, but then she felt Nibi hit her head. Nibi said in a scared voice, idiot, what are you laughing at? This monster, no, this monster is the strongest thing in this whole room. What do you mean, Nibi? He can't be that good, can he? Yugito asked, confused about how her tailed beast was acting. He's a kitten, and believe me, even me outside the seal wouldn't help. This man could easily beat me in Hachibi, Nibi said grimly, and Yugito looked shocked. So you're saying that if we fight him, there's no way we can win? Yugito asked with a little bit of fear. Exactly, and it's the same with her. That little girl is dangerous, too. Her power speaks, and it's telling me not to fuck with her. If I were you, though, I would want to bed that man right now, because he is definitely the most alpha male person in the world, Nibi said with perverted giggles. Nibi. Yugito yelled through their mental connection. Yugito was embarrassed by what it meant, while B was having a similar talk with the Hachibi. But Hachibi told him not to anger this person because of how powerful he is. Well, now that we've met each other, why are you here? The asked Ainz, who was grinning. He said, I'm here to help you solve your problem in exchange for an alliance. A raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Even if we get rid of that idiot on the throne, we wouldn't be able to take the village back from the lightning Dayamo. He controls everything in this country, Ainz said as Ainz laughed a little. Leave that fool to me. I know someone who could easily beat that fool and his so-called army, Ainz said with confidence. That's fine, but without him or a member of his family, we won't be able to keep our country going for long, Ainz said with a grim smile as Ainz's face brightened. He looked us straight in the eye and said, like I said, don't worry. As soon as he is dead and everyone who works for him is dead, I promise you that you will be the only ruler of the land of lightning. I was confused and asked, oh, and what do you want from me then? I just want two things. That you recognize me as the most powerful person in this world, and that you join forces with Suna and give them what they need, Ainz said as I stared him down. Why would I give up to another tyrant? Ainz asked himself as he saw the lightning coming off the body of the former Rakage. Because I'm not going to rule over your land. What you do on your land is your business. If you want to start your own plans to build your nation and make it strong while forcing other nations to submit, that's your business. As for me, I want to know that if I call on you, you'll be willing to do what I say, Ainz said as the lightning went away. So I can run everything in lighting as long as I recognize you as the most powerful ruler and don't go against you, right? I thought about the deal, and he thought it was fair. This meant he didn't have to worry about this guy in the land of lightning, and he also didn't have to worry about him having to pay his dues. All he had to do was give up their country and rule on his own as a smaller king. Ainz said, yes, and held out his hand for A to shake. Very well, I can agree to these terms. Ainz turned to Zeshi and shook A's hand. He just said, start, and she smiled. Of course, my lord, she said. Do you want me to kill everyone, or just up to the tower, or somewhere in between? Ainz thought about it for a second and said, I'll do whatever you want. He asked her with a smile, kill to the tower and leave the cage and his secondary allies to me and A, right? Of course, Lord Ainz, she said. In a flash, she was gone, leaving behind a cold laugh that made everyone in the lair shiver. I asked Ainz, who was smiling and his eyes were glowing with power, what have you let loose? He said calmly, it's a demon, but that's nothing compared to what the Lightning Deyamo is going through, and they looked at him like he was crazy. Lightning Deyamo Palace. They can't be stopped, by the gods. Move quickly to the left flank and hit them from there. It's too late, they've already won the left side. By the gods, they're making our dead come back to life and turn on us. They are already dead. Kill them again to send them to the next life. We're trying, sir, but they're killing us left and right, and the dead are eating the bodies of those who haven't been brought back to life. Don't move, mi ga. The lead samurai was hit by a frozen sword and fell to the ground. HMPH, fool. No one can stand up to the power of our god. Quick, take the grounds. Kill the rest. Standing in the courtyard were lizard beasts with many different colors of skin that were a foot taller than the human soldiers they were fighting. When their god told them to fight this army, they were proud to do what he said. During the time they were taking over the land, their god showed them how to solve their problems and quickly turned them into a force that went against many of their pacifist beliefs. They were willing to kill anyone as long as it was for their god's cause. Plus, they were given the magic to bring the dead back to life and use them against their enemies. Lord Ainz taught the druids how to use necromancy to bring peace to their people. This was because the druids had been given the power to control the dead. A brown-scaled lizard man with an ice sword and a mark on his stomach and chest was in charge of the group. This man's name was Zaryusu, and he was the leader of the lizard men. His job was to take control of the courtyard and kill anyone who tried to get close to the capital's gates. When he looked around, he saw that all of the guards were either dead or pleading for their lives before they were attacked by the dead and eaten. Even though he didn't like it, he had to put his feelings aside because it was war and he had to keep the war effort going. As he got closer to the front of the big palace, he could feel auras coming from inside, which meant that more people were still hiding inside. His men tried to break through the walls, but they couldn't because, unlike the rest of the guardians, they didn't have the power to destroy things that were powered by chakra. But it was a good sign when their commanding officer, who had earned the respect of the lizardmen, came forward. He was a big, light blue, four-legged, pincer-armed beetle monster. He had 4 different weapons in his hands, a katana in his lower arm, a halberd in his top left hand, and a second katana and a war axe in his other hands. Some ice crystals grew out of his back and out of his shoulders. Every time he breathed out, a small cloud of ice came out. He took a deep breath of ice and let it out in front of the lizard men, saying, "What seems to be the problem?" They had fought this monster years ago and held their own, but when his allies came to help, they quickly gave in to their power and joined to make a stronger alliance. Plus, because their god had taught them how to use necromancy, they owed him more than anything else. At the same time, this warrior was a man of honor. He often challenged them to spars to help them get better at fighting and to keep his own skills sharp. They were glad to fight him, and Zaryusu thought he was the best of all of them. Even with his ice sword, it was hard for him to fight him on an even playing pitch. If he was honest, it was scary to fight him, and he would not want to die at his hands again. He saw things he never wanted to see again when he was dying. As the beetle monster looked at the door, Zaryusu said, "The gate is locked with whatever power the people of this realm use, and we have no way to open it." "Stand back," he said, pointing his halberd at the door. He then swung it and opened the gate. He had 4 blue eyes that he used to look at the people. He said, "Stay out here, and if anyone comes, kill them." He said, "Yes, Lord Cocytus," nodded his head slightly, and walked into the building, making a thud with each step. When he came to this world, it seemed like he had more power than usual, and his ice power became more powerful and raw. Just touching someone with one of the weapons was enough to freeze their limb, which then broke apart seconds later, leaving nothing behind. When someone attacked him on the way to the palace, he used this on them and they were shocked. Cocytus knew that his mission was very important because it was a key part of taking control of this area for their lord. Plus, the army they could make from this land would help them in their plan to destroy Konoha in the future. But until he was sure they couldn't lose with as few deaths as possible, they would keep building and killing them one by one. When Cocytus got to the main doors to the throne room, he could feel the leader of the country and the people who worked for him hiding with the rest of their army. He pushed open the door and walked into the room, where he saw a cowering king sitting on a throne. He could smell that the king had just peed himself, so he knew he had already done it. Good grief. You're the leader of a country. Stop acting like a child. This seemed to wake the nobles up, and they glared and yelled at him. You have no right to attack us. Monster, who do you think you are? Freak, you should bow for us to forgive what you did outside the walls of our palace. I will have you and all of your monsters killed. Guards, kill them. Some samurai and shinobi who were guardians of the Daimyo and loyal to their leader came out of the crowd. Koikuta sighed, more wimps. It was no longer fun or honorable for him to deal with them. When the samurai came at him, he slammed the blade point of his halberd into the ground. Ice covered the floor and froze their feet in place. Soon, ice covered their whole bodies, and they broke apart in a matter of seconds. Next, he turned to the other warriors, who were making a series of hand signs before shouting. Lightning Dragon Jutsu is a style of lighting. Fire style. Fireball Jutsu. Water style. Water Dragon Jutsu. Wind style. Air Cutter Jutsu. Boulder Charge Jutsu is an earth style move. Before any of the jutsu could hit him, he cut the boulders in half with the swords, froze the dragons and broke them, and faced the fireball head-on, but had a thin layer of ice covering his body to lessen the damage. The explosion was huge, and the men thought they had caught him until the smoke cleared and they saw that he was unharmed. If that's the best you can do, then my time is wasted on weaklings, he said. In a flash, he was on top of the shinobi and had cut one in half with the swords, impaled another on the bottom point of the halberd, and then used the war axe to cut one of the shinobi's head open and cut his brain out. The last ninja took out his tanto and rushed at the monster. In the name of the royal family. He swung and hit the monster's head with his sword, but it cracked and broke in two. After swinging the body off the spike of his halberd, he swung the axe part down and cut the man in half, freezing him into 2 ice blocks that broke when they hit the ground. He looked at the royal family and said, "How boring." He then walked towards him with heavy steps. He heard the other nobles running for their lives out of the room. But not long after that, if their screams are any indication, the dead and lizard men attack them and soon eat them. Cocytus didn't care about them. He turned back to the ruler and held up his halberd. The daimyo screamed, "Wait. I'll give you anything you want." He was trying to beg for his life. "No, you can't. Lord Ainz wants your land, and it will be his." Without waiting for a response, the halberd hit him and cut off his head, leaving a headless body on the throne. Before he looked at the terrified wife and children, he froze the body and broke it up. "Leave. The lizard men will let you go. Don't ever come back to the palace again, because it belongs to Lord Ainz now," he told the woman as she bowed her head. "Thank you. and then they left, not caring about the monster that killed her husband. He was a jerk anyway, and the only reason she stayed with him was to keep her kids from doing the same things he did on his own. As he had said, the lizard and the dead let her pass, and soon they would start their new lives as people of the land of lighting. Coicutus hit the ground with his halberd and put his hand to his head to start the message spell. "Oh God." Ainz asked Cocytus, "Are you sure?" He told them, "The palace is safe and the daimyo is dead. The land is now yours." Ainz said, "Good, now all I have to do is kill the Rakage and his followers, and the land of lightning will soon be mine." Cocytus asked, "Of course, do you want me to join Aura and Marie on their mission in Iwa?" Ainz told Cocytus, "Go to Wave. There's something I want you to get from either. A powerful sword that belonged to a good man and a mask of someone who saved his life." Cocytus nodded, but Ainz couldn't see it. "Of course, my lord, it will be done," he said, taking his hand off the ground to end the spell and then picking up his weapon. Coicutus walked out of the palace with his halberd in his hand and saw the lizard people cleaning up the dead bodies and turning the undead back into the dead. Zaryusu said, "We're just putting things away." "Good friend, lock this place up and keep it safe until our lord comes to claim it," Cocytus said with a nod. Zaryusu said, "For our god," and Cocytus turned away. Coicutus said, "For my lord." Then he left him and went to the land of Wave. If this sword was worth it, he would make sure the master got it as soon as possible. Kumo. Most people would have thought that the Kumo shinobi would have worked hard to push Zeshi back and stop her from getting to the tower. They would have thought that they would have pushed her harder than she has ever been pushed before. They thought it would be hard for her to match their awesome skills. Sad to say, that's not true, because Zeshi was yawning because he was bored. Honestly, these shinobi weren't even warming her up. She picked fights with Albedo and Shaltir that were small but lasted longer. The other women in the tomb, too. Even the maids were stronger than these idiots, but she had no trouble beating them. Sad to say, it seemed like these idiots weren't strong enough on their own, so they just threw around natural things in the hopes that it would kill her. But her special scythe lets her cut through them easily. On top of that, the enemy's blood was all over her golden streamed, black and white scythe with a red gem in the middle of the blade. Some of them she cut in half down the middle, killing them as they fell apart. Others she cut in half across the stomach, and some she cut off their arms and legs before cutting them in half or cutting off their heads. Within an hour of getting the order to kill the warriors, she had already made a lot of the town look like blood. She had also made a straight path to the tower and was ready to break in. But then her lord spoke. "Zeshi, that's enough," her master said. When she turned her head, she saw him standing there in his new shinobi outfit, like Hagoromo's robes. He felt that these robes covered him as a lich elder and as a shinobi god wearing fancy robes. She bowed, trying not to think about how good he looked in those robes. She said, "Of course, my lord, go ahead into the tower, and I'll make sure no one gets in the way of your conquest." Ainz nodded his head, patted her black, white, and pink striped hair, and went into the tower. Darui, Yugito, Samui, and Karui were all following him. No one could believe how much damage this little girl caused on her own, and they all wondered what kind of power this guy had to be able to stop her. When they got to the middle of the tower, they saw a boy with white hair and a lollipop in his mouth. He had his sword out and was staring at them. He looked at the Kumo group and said, "Traitor. Omoi, are you really going to fight against me?" The asked as Samui and Karui glared at their former teammate. During the coup, he made it clear that he planned to turn them and Yugito into his personal sex slaves for his own pleasure. They were annoyed because they thought he was better than this, but he turned out to be just another man who wanted to get with them. So, when they ran away, they had to fight him without letting the rest of the village know. It wasn't easy, but they did it, even though they got hurt. But this time was different because they had a chance and Ainz or at least A was going to fight him instead. Damn right, I am. I wanted something that was finally mine, something that would let me be my own person instead of the idiot everyone thinks I am, Omoi said angrily as Ainz laughed. You're an idiot, though, Omoi said, turning to Ainz and growling at him. What? He asked in a furious tone. Ainz shook his head and said, You are an idiot. You turned your back on your true friends and allies for some kind of perversion, and now you want everyone to understand your desire for grandeur and perversion. You are a sad person. Shut up. I'll show you who's a sad person when I rip your head off and make you watch the women please me. He gathered lightning in his sword and charged at Ainz with a big swing, but Ainz dodged the attack. He then put out his hand, quickly turned his eyes to the Rinnegan, and said, "Almighty push." Soon, the boy with white hair was sent flying into the wall and coughing up blood from the attack. "Come on, let's go deal with the Raikage and his followers. The girls and Darui will deal with this idiot?" The girls laughed, and Darui sweated when he saw them laughing about how they were going to torture him for what he said about them and what he was planning for them. Naruto and A got to the top of the building and kicked down the door. Inside, they saw Junin in cage robes cowering and shaking when they saw Naruto and A. "Coward, you dare to ruin that seat with your actions, and you ruin my father's name and title by not having the guts to look me in the eyes." It was covered in lightning armor and ready to attack the boy when the boy shouted, "Come bold, kill these traitors." Shinobi in masks came out of the shadows to attack them. Ainz moved the fastest and was gone in a flash, but not before his hand stabbed 2 bolts through the face and sent the others crashing into the wall, where they left marks. Ainz turned to them and cast an illusion with a whisper without waiting. "Tsukuyomi." The Raikage was dragged into a dark illusion where he was tortured for hours when it was only seconds. Ainz turned to A and told him, "The damage is done. You can kill him now. His mind is broken. I'll take care of these guys." After cleaning his arm of the 2 bodies, he quickly turned back to the other shinobi in the wall and hit them with twin fire dragons without hand signs. A grabbed the fool, threw him out the window, and yelled at him, "Be now." Soon, the 8 tails came out with a tailed beast ball in its mouth, fired, and exploded, killing the fool while watched in his robes and hat. He sat down and sighed. As Ainz smiled, he said, "It's good to be in charge again." Ainz asked as a side, "You remember what we agreed to, right?" "Yes, you have the full support of the Land of Lightning," A said, and Ainz nodded. "In exchange, I'll run the country as needed, and if you need anything, all you have to do is ask." "Right, and at this point, I'll leave some of the creatures around to help keep control and drive out any remaining supporters," Ainz said, and nodded as he spoke. "Great, thank you for your help, Ainz." Ainz smiled and left the room, thinking about how to make this country and Suna work to his advantage. But he didn't think much about it because he was going to spring to visit Koyuki and his dear Anko. He told himself, "Wait for me, Snake Charmer, I'm coming for you." Missed. A man in a mask was in the middle of a lake. His mask looked like an orange swirl, but it only had 1 eye hole. He was looking for something while wearing a black robe with red clouds on it. He finally sees it as the 3-tailed beast coming up out of the water. "So you finally show yourself, 3 tails, come to me." He turned on his Sharingan, but before he could put the creature in his trance, he had to dodge an attack from behind. When he turned his head, he saw a small person in a torn red cloak with a white mask over their face. "Sorry, asshole, but my lord wants that thing, and he gets what he wants," the attacker in the cloak said. "Who are you to stand in my way?" asked the man in the orange mask as the other person took off their mask to reveal red eyes in the face of a young girl with fangs. "I'm not your superior, you scum. You should remember that you're below me, you asshole," she said as the man clenched his teeth. "My name is Toby, chick," the man said as the girl gave him a dirty look. "I'm your opponent now, Evil Eye," she said as she put on her mask. "I'm busy, even though fighting you and studying your body would be fun," Toby said with a smile. Evil Eye said, "Oh, you're going to make time now," and with a snap of her fingers, she pulled a huge figure with red eye sockets and red markings going down its chest from the water. Big, fat hands and fingers, and he had power and energy that came from another planet. Before the 3 tails could move, the creature hit the turtle with its arms, sending it back into the water. "What the heck? Like I said, Gargantua is going to beat the turtle into submission," Evil Eye said as Toby growled. "You, on the other hand, are going to be too busy dying by my hands. Maybe Master will give me a reward for killing you. Bring it, B*TCH. I'll show you what the Uchiha elite can do." Toby yelled in anger as he charged at her. The fight between the Vampire clan and the Uchiha clan will start soon. Evil Eye didn't like what she had to do. She was sent to Mist so that this idiot wouldn't steal the Sanbi. Don't get her wrong, Euro, it was an easy job for her because this guy was weaker than her, even though he was stronger than most people in this world. She was pretty sure that the Pleiades would easily kill this guy if they were here. She just doesn't like fighting enemies who can become invisible without her knowing how. She had been casting spells at this guy for the last 4 minutes, but he just ignored them and charged her with a kunai. Evil Eye sighed in irritation as he said, "It's stupid that no one can beat a Uchiha elite." His words were full of pride. "God, do you ever stop talking?" she asked as she pointed a green magic circle at the water. Whips of water came out of the water and stopped him. They hit him, but he got far away before they could hurt him. This was getting to her, and she wanted to kill this guy. She glared at the man in front of her and said, "Please die. My lord told me to get rid of you and your kind." "Oh, really? Then he must have thought I was weaker than I was. Let me send you back to your lord in pieces." He yelled as he made 2 quick hand signs and then fired 2 fireballs. She saw them coming, though. So, because she had a red magic circle in front of her, she was able to absorb the attack, which shocked the Uchiha. "You should know that, unlike my allies, I've studied until I can use the most powerful and dangerous spells. But I've learned that it's best to have a counterspell ready for people who use attacks that are too strong," she said as the masked man glared at her from behind his mask. "What do you mean by spells?" he asked as Evil Eye grinned behind her mask. Evil Eye quickly called up 3 golden circles and made golden beams rain down on Toby, who used his Kamui to move out of the way of the attack. She said, "Don't worry about anything, because you're still going to die today." He then used teleportation to get to the other side of the lake to avoid doing any more damage. He was surprised when the 3 tails came back up and Gargantua was holding on to it by the tails. How? How is this possible? The Biju are some of the strongest beings in the world, he asked as Evil Eye laughed. "Gargantua is one of our strongest warriors, and only our lord can stop him. Now that he's taken care of the turtle, it's time to wrap this up," she said as she called up another golden circle from which came golden chains that wrapped around the man's body. He tried to use his Kamui, but it didn't work. He was afraid that if he couldn't get away, whatever she was planning might kill him. She called up a red circle and aimed it at him. "Try your own fire," she told him as she threw 2 fireballs right at him. He could tell they weren't made of chakra, but of something else. They were strong, and if he didn't do something, they were going to kill him in a second. So, he did what he could and cast Kamui not on the chains but on himself, which let him get away. But he didn't know that Evil Eye had broken the chains so that he could do that and get away. So, he wouldn't be killed by the fireballs and could get away to tell his small group. By doing this, he would want to get back at her lord, but he would stay out of sight to try to figure out what was going on. This is what Lord Ainz had in mind. He wanted them to be on the defensive for a while so he could start more heat waves in other places. Her master was a great person. Most people might wonder how Evil Eye came to work for the great Lord Ainz. Well, she and her team were getting tired of their kingdom and dreamed of a time when they could fight for something bigger than themselves. At the time, she was in love with Ainz's other persona, a dark-armored warrior named Momin. Her team was worried about how much she liked the man, but she didn't care because she knew he was good enough for her undead heart. Even more so after he saved her from having an affair with Demiurge when they were on a mission and she was almost killed. From there, when the war between the kingdoms started, he told her the truth, but she didn't turn against him. Instead, she joined him. Her team was hesitant at first, but when they found out that their own kingdom was going to turn them in for just being with Ainz, they agreed to join. This made them mad, and they swore that would never happen to them again. During that time, they helped him take over most of the world and then stayed with him to protect him as his own personal women's squad. Even the team's women all wanted to be with him. He was happy about it and wanted to know what would happen next. Now that he had a human body, they wanted to know if they would soon become mothers. But that won't happen for a long time. She called up an orb and put the giant turtle monster inside it. Then she looked at the Sandbee. From there, she watched it swim around in the sphere's small ocean of water. She said, "Well, mission accomplished, good job, Gargantua," as the giant monster lowered its head and Evil Eye patted it. She wasn't sure, but she thought he liked the nice thing she did because the red light was so bright. From what she knew, Gargantua couldn't move without Lord Ainz's permission, but in this world, that was no longer the case. Due to Shaltir collecting the souls of the shinobi who dared to fight against her and CZ having a soul inside of her from an attack on her mind, they were able to combine them to give to Gargantua. It makes him get his own, pseudo-soul, which, when it was working, let him move and fight on his own. The most important thing is that he can't plan ahead or do anything other than follow the first order to follow someone, take something down, or kill something that bothers them. Plus, he was like a grown-up puppy that only wanted to please its master and acted sad when it felt like it failed. Evil Eye put her free hand on her head. "Oh, Lord. Gargantua and I have done what we set out to do," she said, telling her master about her success. Ainz said in a calm voice, "Good, get back to the tomb as soon as you can. I have a job for you and your team that needs your attention and touch, I guess you could say." "Of course, my lord, can I ask what it is?" she said. "Simple, there is a village called Nadeshiko that is said to be a tribe of women who don't let men into their land. I need your team to go there and persuade them that joining us is best for them." He said, "Tell them I'm willing to let them stay their own independent nation if they promise to be loyal to me when the time comes and if I need their help in a major war effort soon." "Yes, my lord, and if they say no?" she asked, her voice getting sharper. "See to it that they don't. But if they do, show them why they should join our alliance," Ainz said as she nodded. "As you wish, my lord, and where will you be?" she asked while Ainz laughed. "I'm entering the land of spring right now, and I'd like to see an old friend. Until then, I want everyone to either watch over the tomb or work on a task," he said with a smile that no one could see. Evil Eye said, "Very well, my lord," and then she cut the link. Evil Eye told the big stone monster to follow her home when she could no longer talk to it. It would take a long time to get home, and she was sure that this mission would be, in a word, hard. Spring. Koyuki couldn't believe it. This man Sebas wanted her to meet was a teenager in fancy-looking robes who was with a tiny girl holding a huge scythe. From what she could tell, this person had a lot of power, but they were hiding it to avoid a fight. The man said to Koyuki, "You look as beautiful as the day we met all those years ago." Koyuki gave him a confused look. "I'm sorry, I don't remember meeting you," she said, knowing that she would know this kind of person. "Yes, you wouldn't recognize me because I'm different in some ways, but I'm sure you'll recognize this," he said as he changed his hair and clothes with his magic. Koyuki yelled, "Naruto. That can't be." As she looked at the dead man in front of her. "It was impossible for me to beat your uncle with a rainbow Rasengan, right?" he asked as Koyuki laughed. "I was the one who helped you decide to lead your country and be in your new movie." She said, "Those are known facts, and you could still be anyone." Naruto sighed and knew this was going to be the case, so he pulled out something no one else could have. It was a dark ruby necklace, and no one on his team knew at the time that he had stolen it from Doto. More in the sense that he kept the gem as a backup in case he ever needed her help. Before it finally hit her like a ton of bricks, she said, "That necklace. I remember Naruto taking it, but I never thought. It's you, Naruto," she cried when she saw the teen version of the little boy who had given her the courage to stand up to her uncle. She got off her throne and gave him a hug, oblivious to the cruel look the little loli was giving her. From there, Naruto gave her the hug and the crystal back when a woman with tears in her eyes came out from behind the throne wearing a trench coat and a fishnet shirt. She asked him, "Naruto-kun?" "My snake charmer, I'm back," he told her with a smile, and she wanted to believe him. No one else ever called her that, so she walked up to him and did the only thing she could think of to do. She gave him a punch in the gut. Naruto felt like he lost his breath. Naruto thought to himself as he held his stomach, "She is just as strong as I remembered." That punch hurt like hell. Zeshi would kill anyone who tried to hurt her lord, but she knew this could happen. She must have been hurt by the village, just like he was, and she was back on her own. So he thought she would hit him for what he did and why he didn't come back sooner. Why you're still as strong as I remember," he stuttered at first because of the punch, which made Anko laugh. She said, "Yeah, well, I guess I owe you that since you left me alone for so long." Naruto laughed. He said, "That's true, but I couldn't get to this world until a few months ago." Anko just smiled. She said, "I understand. I'm just glad to have you back." Naruto smiled back and gave her a tight hug. He told Zeshi, who was smiling, "I promise I'm not going anywhere." Even though she knew that Anko would be more important than her and the other girls, it was still a sweet moment. This meant that she would be queen of the tomb. Even though her being stronger than them will drive them crazy, he promised to treat them all the same. But she was his first love, so they had to let this go or else their lord would be upset. When Anko turned to the ruler of spring, Naruto said, "So, Anko-chan, you've gotten stronger since I last saw you. Want to come back to my house and learn some new moves so you can become stronger than any other woman in this world?" she said, if Koyuki is okay with that, and Koyuki nodded. It's okay, she said as Naruto smiled. Just promise to come see me soon. I'll do it, and I'll leave you something, he said, and a dark golden rune appeared on the floor. From there, she could see that the room was filled with light. This is an alert rune that will let us know if someone dangerous comes into the palace. Then, someone from the tomb will come and attack that person or those people to save your life, he said as the three of them left. She told herself, with a small blush on her face, thank you, Naruto-kun. I hope to see you and Anko again soon. Her eyes were on the door that the group left through. Iwa. Aura was bored. She had met a group of mercenaries today who thought she was a rich kid they could rob. More than that, they wanted to take all of her money, kill her, and maybe even steal her virginity, if she guessed right. But to be honest, she couldn't care less. Most of them were already dead before she called Hamsky to kill the rest. He seemed to like killing people who were brave enough to question his lord and his right to rule this country. She turned her head and saw her brother coming towards her. She smiled and hopped off the pile of dead bodies. She asked, so the rumors about Iwa are true? He shook his head. No, the place is the opposite of what we thought. From what I've heard, Iwa hasn't had a real grudge against Konoha in the last few years until recently. Apparently, what happened during the last Great Shinobi War was forgiven because both sides lost so many people. For them, Minato was a man of great respect who paid the families of the people he killed and apologized for their deaths. Mare said as Aura scratched her head. She asked Mare, who nodded, I see, so they might be a good ally for the cause. Yes, from what I can tell, only the older Iwa shinobi are spreading this propaganda, Mare said as Aura smiled. Aura laughed a little at the idea that the worst country in the world is also the one that wants to solve all the problems. Mare gave a small chuckle of his own. They stopped, though, when Aura sighed. You can come out of the shadows, we know you're there. You're spying on us, so we'll tell you what our plans are for this poor country, right? She said as she and her brother turned their heads. When they did, Jiraiya was there, looking at them. He looked angry because he didn't like being caught so quickly. He just got to the country recently to try to start trouble by spreading rumors that Kumo is coming to take their land. But now it's all gone because of these two little kids. Who are you two, and do you work for this Lord Ainz guy I've heard about? He asked Aura, who was just staring at him with bored eyes. Yeah, why not? Aura said with a bored frown. Even though she wasn't the most powerful guardian in terms of magic or power, she was still more than strong enough to deal with this fool. Even better, her brother was here, so the two of them could fight just as well as some of the other guardians. Then I'll get right to the point, Jiraiya said as Aura laughed. Where is your leader? She asked, do you think we could answer that? Before she saw him run away quickly. Maybe this will get your mouth to shut up, he said. But Aura had already jumped over his punch and landed on the arm that was stretched out. Jiraiya was very shocked by this because he had never seen her move or turn around to face him. Her speed is faster than Guy's. This is a bad thing. Without toads, I don't really have the same chance of beating S classes as I did before, Jiraiya panicked to himself. Well, that was slow. If you want to fight us, you should step up your game, Aura said as she jumped off the arm, did a front flip, and kicked the ground with her foot like an axe. Jiraiya was able to use a log instead, but when he did, the kick broke the log into pieces and cracked the ground. She looked at the broken log and said, huh, I guess he was right. They are quick on their feet. As he went through some hand signs, Jiraiya said, that's more than you'll ever know. Fire style. Twin dragon attack. With his cheeks puffed out, he let go of the move, and two fire dragon heads came out of his mouth. When they got to Aura, she went straight into the attack. The explosion was huge, and he was proud of what he had done. He told Mare, who was frowning, one down, one to go, and this one looks weaker. I wouldn't jump the gun on that one, he said, and before Jiraiya could ask what he meant, a spinning roundhouse kick hit him in the back of the head. He was lifted off the ground, but when he landed, he was still standing. Aura put her hands behind her head and sighed as she said, that was weak. Man, I heard you were strong, but I guess this is what happens when you don't have the toads to rely on, right? She asked with a smile. Jiraiya was shocked and asked, how do you know that? No one outside of Konoha knew about that, and he was sure he had never told any of his spies about it. To be honest, it wasn't hard to find out. We just looked around your village for a while and found out that's what happened, Jiraiya said with a growl. He couldn't let this get out if it hadn't already. Because then women wouldn't respect him anymore, and he'd be in big trouble if old enemies came looking for his head because of what he did to them years ago. He said as he gathered his chakra in his hands, "You won't leave here with that information." By doing this, he created a Rasengan that grew until it was as big as a big beach ball. Aura gathered some of her magic and slammed her hand on the ground as she said, "Whoa, that looks dangerous. Better even the odds right now or go for overkill," she said. When the Toad Sage got close to her, he saw a golden light before he hit something. When he looked up, he saw that he hadn't hit the girl, but a huge monster with red lines on its body. When he looked down, the thing seemed to get darker red, so he knew it didn't like being attacked. It let out a primal roar that shook the whole land and woke up everyone in Iwa as well as the two-tailed Jinchuriki. Aura sighed and said, "Nice idiot, but now he's mad." The Toad Sage knew this was going to be a mess. Gargantua was not on the same level as her, but he was different. Because he is not easily hurt by chakra, he could easily destroy this whole country if he wanted to. For him, he was a monster who had turned into a person, and even the gods would try to beat him. She knows that the whole tomb fought it and almost died trying to kill it. It was stronger than even Albedo, which made them very scared. It only wanted to please Ainz, and if it thought his master would be mad at him, it would get mad, and you could kiss your ass goodbye. Then Jiraiya did some hand signs again and shot another set of fireballs at the monster. But as soon as the attacks hit the creature, it seemed to get madder. Its red eye thing was brightly glowing, and it looked like it was getting ready to attack. He took a deep breath and said, "Oh, fuck, I guess it's time to bring out my ace in the hole." He got up and walked away, and before he knew it, he was at the border of the country. Still angry, Gargantua shot a dark red beam from its eye, which blew up where the man was. He lived because someone else took his place. He then looked at what the attack had done. It had destroyed 3 mountains all at once. This is bad, and I really need to get back to Konoha to tell them. If anything, I might have to find something that can even the odds against a monster like that. It's almost as bad as the Kyuubi. Jiraiya thought this as he worried about his home. With that move, Secret Art, Run Like a Bitch Jutsu, he was gone and headed back to Konoha. Mare looked worriedly at his sister. "Sister, you know that our job wasn't to get people's attention, right? We might have told a whole country that we were there," he said as Aura shrugged. "Yeah, I know, but at the same time, I wasn't going to waste more time with that weakling. I mean, you had your magic ready, but it would be a waste. Plus, this way we can talk to everyone in one place." However, Aura trailed off, looking at the destroyed mountains with a sigh. She finished by saying, "Ainz might not be happy about the destruction." Moss Master mad?" Gargantua asked. Aura smiled as she looked up at the big guy. "Don't worry, big guy. I brought you here, so I'll take the blame." She stopped talking and looked at Gargantua and her brother with shock on their faces. She yelled, "Holy crap. You can talk." As Gargantua nodded. He said, "BBB barely. Learn. From people." Aura nodded. "Okay, I guess that's a side effect of the souls merging then," she said, and the giant nodded. "Big guy, do you have anything to say?" she asked. As Mare and Aura looked at each other, he said, "DDD dark secret, master deserves." Those words surprised and confused them both. "Okay, big guy, let's send you home. The master will want to talk to you in person about this dark secret," Aura said, and in a flash of light, the big stone golem was gone. In his place were the army of Iwa and the 2 demons containers. An Iwa shinobi asked Aura, who was smiling, if she was going to say who she was and why she was there. "Sure," she said. If there's one thing Aura is good at, it's talking her way out of trouble. Mare, not really. But because cross-dressing is not common in this world, many people would wonder why a boy was wearing girl clothes. Tomb. Back at the tomb, Ainz had put Anko to bed and was about to spend the night with his lovely snake mistress when Gargantua came back and, according to some of the servants, started talking. He thought this could happen, but he didn't think it would happen so fast. He must have had something important he wanted to say to him. He told Anko that she would have to wait a little longer to lose her virginity after hearing this. If the big guy thought what he was saying was important and he was trying to tell him something, he would answer. Anko got it, and she told him that she could wait a little longer since she had already waited so long. He looked at the giant and asked, "Well, Gargantua, what did you want to tell me?" He said, "Dark secret, hidden in Konoha," and Ainz nodded. "Yes, I get it, but what is it?" asked Ainz. Gargantua said, "True, Will of Fire is a powerful artifact that has something." Ainz raised an eyebrow. He asked the giant, who nodded, "Wait, so you're saying that the Will of Fire is actually a weapon?" As Ainz looked down to think, Gargantua said, "Yes, it's a powerful weapon that can do a lot of damage. The tomb would be hurt." "I get it. The big guy has the souls of Anbu and some other shinobi, so he knows about this great weapon that is in that bad village. So, after going through the memories, he was able to find the weapon in question." He thought to himself as Gargantua again caught his attention, the only reason Shaltir didn't do it was because she can only use blood to give herself more power, not to read memories. "Dark Source must be freed," he said, which made Ainz confused. Ainz asked, "What do you mean by free?" "Past power weapon must be freed," was the answer he got. He asked the giant, who nodded, "I don't think I understand, old friend. Do you know exactly where the weapon is hidden?" "Behind the past. Deep inside. Only the leader knows," he said, which only made Ainz more confused. "The past? Deep inside? Only the leader knows?" Ainz asked himself as he scratched his head for several minutes, trying to figure out what he meant. But he still didn't understand. That was until Albedo and Sebas showed up. They seemed to sense their lord's anger. When Ainz turned to Sebas, he asked, "Is there something wrong, my lord? Maybe you too can help me. Gargantua told me that Konoha has a powerful weapon that can do a lot of damage to the tomb. He said that it is powered by something, but he couldn't tell me exactly what. He could only give me hints." Ainz said as Albedo grabbed his attention. She asked, "What would the hints be then?" As Ainz crossed his arms. "It's hidden deep behind the past, and Root has looked but can't find it. Only the leader would know," he said as they both thought about the clues. Albedo and Sebas talked about it for a few seconds before Sebas got it. "Could it be hidden in the Hokage's mountain?" he asked Ainz, who was looking at him. He asked, "You mean the Hokage Mountains?" To make sure he understood correctly. Sebas agreed and gave it some thought. It makes sense that no one went to those places other than to see the faces of past leaders. Still, that didn't answer the question of how it worked or what it could do. Albedo said, "Master, if this weapon is really as dangerous as Gargantua said, we might want to send Narbril to look for it. She is a spy in the village, and if she plays her part right, she might be able to get to it." Sebas nodded. "Indeed, my lord," he said as Ainz shook his head. "If we have her beat Tsunade, she might be able to get to the Will of Fire weapon and find out how it works." "I get that, but if she is found out, she would have to leave, and even though I don't think anyone in the village is strong enough to hurt her, I don't want to put her in any unnecessary danger," he said. Albedo quickly said, "True," and Gargantua started moving around, showing that he is still there. "The path north of the village leads to an ancient secret that requires the leader's blood and that only the Hokage can enter," he said as Ainz raised an eyebrow. Ainz gave some thought to what he said. This meant that the Hokage was the only one who could use a certain part of the weapon. To get into the weapon's chamber, Tsunade would have to be used, but how? If there were guards in the room, there was no way to pretend to be here, and even if there weren't, there might be some defenses. He didn't want to mess up on something like this because they only had one shot and if they missed, they might break the gun. Ainz wanted to think about this some more, but something set off his sensors. He looked at a holographic image and saw Jiraiya heading back to the village. Gargantua said, "Toadman knows about mission, but Aura failed to kill him." This made Ainz growl. He told the others, "I guess I'll have to deal with this then," before his attention was drawn to Albedo. She said, "I'll help," even though she was glowing with dark power and making the tomb shake. Sebas shook his head, and Ainz said, "Watch from a distance. I want to deal with this fool myself. We saw you fight Shaltir many years ago, and we can't bear to do it again. Someone must go with you just in case," he said as Ainz sighed. Ainz said, "Okay, Sebas, you'll come with me on this mission today." He then let out his full aura, which made the whole tomb bow down in awe of his power. As his aura went away, he said, "Jiraiya will die." The Land of Fire's Edge. Jiraiya was so close to home that he had to tell Tsunade about a possible enemy who was trying to work with Iwa. He knew for sure. This Ainz guy was trying to get the other countries to join him so he could attack them soon. He had to find her and tell her that it was time to use their secret weapon. But as soon as he could see the border, someone was there with an old man who only had one eye. They looked oddly like his student's old child, but he wasn't in the mood to deal with them. He told the teen, who was staring at him, "Get out of the way. This is about Konoha's safety." "I don't think so. I don't want you to go back to Konoha and make trouble for me." He looked at himself in the mirror and asked, "Giving you trouble?" As the teen growled at him, he said, "You're Ainz." "That's my name now, but you knew me by a different name, right, pervy sage?" Ainz asked Jiraiya, who was still stunned and quiet. Jiraiya said, "You couldn't have died. I saw your body burn to ashes," as Ainz growled. "Oh, so you did kill my old body. But the gods gave me a new body and, more importantly, a second life where I became something greater than the gods themselves. I'm a supreme being, a demon ruler, and an undead," Ainz said as Jiraiya laughed. "Yeah, right, you can't be," he said as Ainz laughed. "But it doesn't matter, because once I beat you here, I'll just drag you back to be our weapon like you were always meant to be. You're going to have trouble with that, since I'm going to kill you right now. Also, I don't have the Kyuubi anymore, and you lost the Toads a long time ago. Right now, you're nothing but a useless child compared to me," Ainz said as Jiraiya growled and charged the boy. "I don't need them to beat sense into you about respecting your elders," he said as Ainz laughed and ran away as soon as he was close enough to punch him. He came back and stood next to him. Then he hit him in the face and sent him flying. "Sebas, make sure no one gets in the way if they show up. If you have to, kill them." "I will get my revenge," Ainz told his butler. The butler bowed to him, and Ainz ran after the man. Because Aura brought him something before going to Iwa, he was able to punish the fool before he died by finding this wool of fire and taking what was inside it. Jiraiya got up and scratched his jaw. The kid was stronger than he used to be, but he was too full of himself. As soon as he made a mistake, he was going to put a seal on him, which would knock him out and send him back to the village. Ainz was standing in front of him and frowning at the man before waving him on. Jiraiya jumped into action and tried to hit him in the stomach with a palm strike, but it was blocked. He tried to hit him on top of the head with an axe kick, but he moved out of the way just a little bit. Ainz moved out of the way of that one, too, and then hit him in the stomach with a push kick, sending him tumbling to the ground. The sage came running at him with hand signs. Jiraiya yelled, "Fire style, fire dragon jutsu," while Ainz waited for the dragons to get close enough to turn on his eyes and take in the chakra. Jiraiya was surprised that his attack didn't even explode, but instead seemed to just vanish. He saw a mix of the Rinnegan and the Sharingan when he looked into his eyes. When he saw those two eyes joined together, it scared him. This little boy had two of the most powerful eyes in the world, and he wasn't afraid to use them. Ainz asked Jiraiya, who was acting like a fool, "Tell me why." "I've always been curious." He was confused and asked, "Why what?" Ainz looked at the former Toad Sage and asked, "Why did you betray me? Why did you have me killed? What were you trying to do with my death? Was this revenge for your student, or was this revenge against me for something else?" The Toad said that a child born of great suffering would be the one to decide the fate of this world. "No child should have that much power, so Tsunade and I decided to control you from the shadows, drain you of all assets, and make you suffer. This way, when the time came, you would be an easy-to-control weapon. So you put me to death because of some stupid plan? You didn't want me to find out about how you tortured me and left me for dead? You wanted to make me a weak weapon for the village to use against enemies, but not enough to be a real threat to you." He asked Jiraiya, who nodded. "Yes, that's how the world works. All demon containers were meant to be controlled and used as weapons. Your parents and the other Hokages knew this," he said as Naruto gave him a dirty look. "Really, so you're saying for sure that my parents Naruto started," but Jiraiya cut him off. "Don't say that, you monster. You're not good enough to be their child or to have their blood," he spat as Ainz looked at him with a glare. "Fuck you. So you're sure that all the previous Hokages and my parents would agree with what you did to me?" Ainz asked as he tried to hide a wicked smile. "Of course, they knew the village came first, and it must always come first, even if it means sacrificing your children," he said as Naruto smiled. "Well, let's put that theory to the test," he said as he took something out of his robe. Jiraiya turned pale when he saw what it was. He was scared and asked, "Where did you get that?" "Oh, in some old ruins," Naruto said as he put the mask on his face. "As an Uzumaki, I know of our connection to the Shinigami, and the god owes me some favors, so I don't think he would mind if I called him with this. Without warning, Jiraiya charged at him with his Rasengan. Jiraiya screamed, "You won't bring the dead back, you monster. Die." Rasengan. Naruto held out his other hand and whispered, "It's not possible." When Jiraiya heard the words, "Almighty Push," he was thrown across the ground and into a tree while Naruto began to chant. I know there isn't a chant, but this makes more sense to me, and if you call on a god, shouldn't there be a chant? Come out, you who are in charge of the next world. Bring out the souls you have collected and give them to the first, second, third, and fourth Hokages, as well as the wife of the fourth Hokage. Shinigami, please come to my aid. Because of this, Uzumaki needs you. The Shinigami appeared above Naruto and cut open his stomach with his knife. He then threw 5 souls into the air, which turned into 5 bodies. Even though they were Edo Tensei bodies, they still worked. One man stood there wearing dark red samurai armor. He had long black hair and dark eyes. The man next to him had white hair and blue samurai armor, and he looked more angry than the other man. A gray-haired old man in a black jumpsuit with armor and a blonde man in a blue jumpsuit and a white cloak with flames at the bottom. A woman with red hair and a green dress stood next to him. "Brother," said the one with white hair, Tobirama, to the one in red armor, Hashirama. Hashirama looked around and said, "Tobirama, it's good to see you, but it looks like we've been called to the human world." Hiruzen sighed and said, "So it seems. It's good to see you both again." He didn't like the Shinigami's stomach, but it was nice to be away from it for a while. When he looked over, he saw that Minato's wife was hitting him for putting the tailed beast in his son and smiling at him while doing it. When Ainz coughed to get their attention and showed them the Shinigami mask, he asked, "How did we get here?" "I'm the one who called you all here," he told Hiruzen, who was stunned. "Is that you, Naruto?" he asked as Ainz smiled at the figure of his grandfather. "It's good to see you again, Gigi," Ainz said as Hiruzen smiled. "Yes, it's good to see you, grandson," he said as Ainz shrugged. "How have you been?" he asked. Ainz said with a slight bow, "I'm now known as Ainz, the supreme being of this world." He heard, "Son?" coming from his left. He looked at Minato and Kushina and smiled, then gave Minato a punch in the face. Ainz rolled his arm after the punch and said, "That's what I get for sealing the tail beast inside me and thinking the village would love me." Kushina yelled, "Ha, saw that coming, Minato." As Ainz turned to face his mother, he felt someone push him. He sighed when he turned around and saw Jiraiya going through hand seals. Jiraiya yelled as Ainz yawned, "How dare you do this, you little brat. You are lower than Orochimaru, bringing back the dead for your own sick amusement. I will end your life here in the hopes that you will change in the next one. Tell me something I'll care about," Ainz said as he did a hand sign that caused a pillar of earth to come out of the ground and hit Jiraiya in the chest. "Now be quiet, you fool," he told him. Hiruzen asked Naruto, "What's going on?" As Ainz changed into his lynch form and scared everyone with this godless creature and the way his power flowed through the area. At this point, they are willing to say that he was likely better than the Kyuubi. Hiruzen asked Ainz, who was looking at all the people he had brought back, "Is that you, Naruto?" "This is what happened to me for believing in the village and fighting for them. Their blind arrogance and desire for power and making others suffer for nothing has made me this. I'm now a lich demon, essentially an undead. Someone that can't live or die as he pleases anymore." He explained as Kushina cried seeing her son like this. Minato gripped his fist tightly. Hiruzen turned away from him, saddened to see his grandson like this. The other Hokages felt sick. Hashirama asked, "How could this happen?" As Ainz cast a spell on everyone so they could remember everything. His past, why he was put to death, what happened when he came back, and all the truths that Jiraiya had been hiding for years. After seeing this, it's safe to say that Hiruzen went up to his old student, picked him up out of the ground, and kicked him into a tree. "You've let me down for the last time, Jiraiya. Today I'll show you how angry I am." Hiruzen yelled as he jumped into action and started beating his student with pure taijutsu, breaking all of his bones. Minato hit him in the back with the Rasengan, Hashirama held him in place with his wood release, Tobirama hit him with his lightning sword, and Kushina hit him with her chakra chains and took his chakra away. "Please, Minato, you have to stop," Jiraiya tried to say, but Minato punched him in the face. The chains held him in place, and the Mokuton helped them. "Will you shut up?" Minato yelled in anger. The man who tortured my son and ignored my last wishes. You don't deserve the last word, Jiraiya. All you deserve is death. He screamed as he turned to face his former teacher. Naruto walked up to him and sighed. Naruto told him, "You know, I've dreamed of this day, and the only thing I regret is that I can only do this once." He was lying, but he didn't want him to know how powerful he really was. He raised his hand and used a powerful spell to bring a huge fireball into his hand. "Burn for your sins," Naruto said in a voice that was so calm it was scary. Jiraiya told Naruto, "No matter what you do, the world will come after you, and they will do everything they can to stop you." Ainz just laughed. "Let them come. I've taken over worlds before, and this will be no different." The god said this world was ready to die, he said as he threw the fireball and set his former sensei on fire. Once his body was gone, he turned to the group and waved his wand of resurrection at them. Soon, the bodies were turned into real ones that could move and breathe. The others were surprised, but Naruto changed back into a human. "I want to know if any of you know what the Will of Fire is. There is a theory that it is some kind of weapon that is sealed somewhere in the Hokage mountain. I don't know what it can do, but I want to get rid of it and stop Konoha from being able to hurt me in the future," Ainz said as he looked at the previous cages. Minato, Kushina, and the first two Hokages all shook their heads in denial. Instead, Hiruzen let out a sigh. "Yes, I know what it is. It's the last resort weapon that gathers the chakra of the person inside the crystal. Anyone who is an enemy of Konoha is basically turned to ash by the power of the crystal, but it can only be used once every 10 years, he said as the others turned to him. Hashirama asked, "Hiruzen, who is inside the crystal?" Hiruzen shook his head. He said, "I don't know who it is, but I know it's someone from our past who has ties to the Kyuubi." Ainz smiled. He knew his grandfather was lying because he could tell by the way he felt that he was trying to keep something from coming out. Naruto knew he was trying to hide something there, and he knew it had something to do with his teacher. Ainz said, "I see, I know who it is now. Quick, let's go there and take care of it." Within seconds, the group of 4 Hokages, a former container, a butler, and Supreme Being moved quickly and found the hidden entrance outside the village and moved through the tunnel hidden inside an illusion stone. Inside, they walked through the halls and up a few flights of stairs until they reached a big room. The room itself was very big, and in the middle of the room, they saw a huge red crystal that looked like fire. Inside the diamond was a woman with red hair and strange marks all over her body. Ainz said, "I knew it," when Hashirama ran up to the crystal, saw the woman, and recognized her. "Mito, what the hell, Hiruzen? Did you do this?" He asked as Hiruzen sighed, knowing that his earlier lie was out and there was no point in trying to hide it. "Yes, I'm sorry, sensei, but it was Mito's last wish. She wanted to be preserved in this to keep someone from coming for her body. But unfortunately, it seemed like she was hit with some kind of curse, and now she has something else sealed into her and increasing her power. We think it was some kind of backlash from the Kyuubi leaving her body and her being imprisoned in that mysterious stone," Hiruzen said as Ainz spoke up. As he walked up to the stone, he said, "Because she's not the same person she used to be." Ainz reached out and touched it. "She was cursed, that much is true, but there's more. This crystal is from the original chakra tree, which means that Kaguya's power is locked into it. When you sealed her in the crystal, it seemed like some of Kaguya's chakra slipped into her body, bringing back her youth and making her the host of the Otsutsuki goddess," Ainz said as Tobirama looked confused. He asked Ainz, who shook his head, "How is that possible? The story says that she was locked away in the moon, right?" "No, that's not what history wants people to believe. But from what I can tell, Kaguya must have sealed some of her chakra into this crystal so that she could take the chakra from her own children and return it to the tree. Unfortunately, her body was sealed into the moon, but her chakra was in the stone and the tailed beast. Luckily, Mito is of her bloodline, so she was able to wake up the dormant chakra in the crystal, and now she is reborn in." He said, "So Mito has another being sealed inside her," and Ainz nodded and broke the glass with his eyes. Mito fell out of the window and into her husband's arms. Naruto walked up to her and, with a few quick hand signs, took the chakra that belonged to Kaguya and put it in his own hand. He then threw it across the room. The room was rocked by a huge explosion, and then the goddess herself stepped out of the light. She had her third eye closed, but other than that, Naruto could see that she was the perfect person in this world. Even with those robes on, she was a bombshell that no one would be smart enough to pass up. Welcome back, Kagaya, Ainz said to the goddess as she looked at him and smiled. You have the chakra of my son, Hagoromo, right? Kagaya asked as she looked at the teenager. Yes, and we have a lot to talk about how to change this world, she said, nodding her head. Soon, everyone gathered around her and teleported out of the room before Tsunade came in to see the will of fire destroyed. She screamed because she was so mad. Her weapon was gone, which made their village weaker, and she was afraid of what would happen next.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.